Mhm. I'm so excited to have Kate here today to share her experience with psoriatic arthritis. Welcome, Kate.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you
can
for
you
the
just
opportunity.
I know I'm so excited. And can you just tell the audience a brief introduction, like where you live and what your relationship to arthritis is?
Yes. So I grew up in Italy, but I've been living in London for 12 years now. And I've been diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis a bit less than 2 years ago. Uh, and yeah, it's been a journey
Yeah.
and ups and downs. And I think now the final diagnosis is psoriatic arthritis, osteoarthritis, osteopenia, and they're still looking into. I have some gut problems, so they're looking into it might be Crohn's disease. They're not
Mm.
quite sure, doing some tests, but yeah, on the right path to yeah get better. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a lot of diagnoses to have to adjust to in a short period of
Yeah.
time. Can you tell me a little bit more about like 2 years ago, what was happening before you got diagnosed? Was it hard to get diagnosed or was it easy? And just walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah. So I think for me it was very difficult to kind of think that my symptoms were related to a disease rather than my lifestyle. For me, especially like being a chef, it was kind of a given to be always in pain, be always exhausted and fatigued. When I started being a chef about 15 years ago.
Mm.
And back then it was very hardcore, on my feet for 18 hours a day, um, carrying weights, chopping, slicing. Of course your hands are going to hurt. Of course you're going to feel pain in your back and your feet. Um, and back then the kitchen was kind of very old school. So don't complain, keep your head down. Everybody's in pain, everybody's feeling what you're feeling, but don't share kind of situation. So,
Right.
and I also think I wasn't ready for being my own advocate and kind of saying, oh no, there is definitely something wrong with me. I need to see a doctor. And it was only kind of in my early 30s that I decided to change my lifestyle.
Mhm.
And so kind of try to work a bit less and having a more sustainable work-life balance. And even then, I realized the symptoms didn't change that much. I was still very fatigued. I was in pain. And especially in my hands, um, it started mostly in my hands, and my fingers are slightly deformed and they're getting worse with time. So that's kind of when I realized, okay, there's something else going on. And then it was, I think, with lockdown, I think
Mhm.
everybody had the time to kind of stop, slow down, and start thinking at our priorities. So I realized, during lockdown, I was at home, I was eating healthy, I was cooking all my meals, I was exercising. There wasn't the stress of work. Of course, there was the stress of a pandemic, but still there was some pain there. So it was only then that I decided to see a doctor. Um, so obviously during the pandemic, it was very difficult to see a doctor. So it was
Mhm.
all through video calls.
Oh,
So with
wow.
a general practitioner, I saw her on video call, and because of the symptoms and family history as well, so my cousin has psoriatic arthritis. So she ran all the usual tests, blood tests, rheumatoid factor, and all of that, and nothing really came out.
Hmm.
So the only thing was I had very, very low vitamin D. I was deficient in that. So that was kind of the only thing. But then she said, since the family history and since all your symptoms are there, I will refer you to a rheumatologist. So I got
That's really
referred.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I got referred, but it was kind of still pandemic time. So I didn't hear anything for months. Then I got a letter for an appointment, and it was due like 4 months later. And by that time, I was in a very, very bad pain. Um, yeah, I was very much in pain. I started working. I lost my previous job because of COVID. So that was
Oh,
very stressful for me. And I was struggling to find a job. Obviously, with, the hospitality industry was just destroyed. It
yeah.
was a very tough time. So with my new job, it was quite a tough one. And I was very stressed, very much in pain. And I just couldn't take it anymore. So I'm just gonna have it.
Oh, yeah. No, no problem. Yeah,
So
yeah, I can't imagine having your first diagnosis experience, during the pandemic. It was a very stressful time for everyone. So I
yeah.
feel for you.
So yeah, I just couldn't take it, and I remember going back home from work, and I wasn't able to hold the fork with my hand. It was so
Mm,
painful I couldn't move it, and I was just crying in pain. So I decided to see a private rheumatologist because
mm.
that was the only way that it was going to be like a lot quicker. And I did get an appointment within days.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was really good, and obviously paid a lot of money, but it was definitely
Yeah.
worth it. I just needed some help and some answers quickly. And this doctor was really helpful. He realized straight away what was going on, with all the symptoms, family history. And so he booked other tests and he booked an ultrasound. Again, nothing,
Mm,
everything was good. Ultrasound didn't show any inflammation. He explained and he said, there are different types of arthritis and not all of them can show. And if you don't have inflammation at that specific moment, it might not show. And he decided to start with hydroxychloroquine straight away, and also on corticosteroids, so on prednisolone, just to help
mm.
me with the pain. And that was really helpful. I didn't sleep for maybe 2 weeks, and
Right. Yeah.
I was full of energy, which was
Hmm.
amazing. And I was
Yeah.
pain free, so that was a bit different experience. But yeah, it was good. And then it was about 2 months I was taking hydroxychloroquine, and nothing happened. And by then I had the appointment with the national health
Hmm.
rheumatologist. And so the private rheumatologist basically said, the next step would be going methotrexate, but it's just so much easier for you to do it through the national health
Hmm.
rheumatologist, because you will have to do all the blood tests. And if you go privately, it's gonna obviously like cost a lot of money. So
Hmm.
wait to see what they say. But if I can be of any help, just let me know. So then when I had my first appointment with the rheumatologist, it was kind of starting from zero again, obviously, because they were
Mm.
like, we realized you've seen someone else, you've been diagnosed, but we will take that, but we will need to run all the tests again. So all
Wow.
the tests were run again, ultrasound, X-ray, everything.
Wow. You'd think they wouldn't. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just starting from zero. So it was a bit frustrating for me just to run through all this. I mean, it was fun, but it was just like, can we please find a solution? Because I was still in a lot of pain, and obviously prednisolone you can't take for a long period of time. So
Oh yeah, and I
um,
just I just want to add a quick little piece of context
mhm,
for those listening that, one of the kind of cruel ironies of these diseases is that they tend to take a long time to get diagnosed for like systemic healthcare issues, whether that's in the UK or the US, where there's, long wait times for rheumatologists. There's a rheumatologist shortage in the United States. That's really, really bad for pediatric rheumatologists. And then, but all of the data and research shows that the earlier you get diagnosed and treated, the better your long-term prognosis. So it's kind of a rude awakening, or another cruel irony when people finally, if you do more research on your condition and you learn that, there can be a feeling of, oh my gosh, like I suffered unnecessarily, in the sense that like, if we could turn back the clock, and like, if you could have gotten that diagnosis, you know what I mean? And I know you can torture yourself thinking
yeah.
like that. So I'm not encouraging people to think that way, but I'm saying for those listening who maybe don't have a diagnosis yet, like there are a lot of objective reasons to be really aggressive about getting a diagnosis, because the earlier you get accurately diagnosed and treated, the better, just objectively across the board. So anyway, just throwing that
Yeah,
out as like a
absolutely.
teachable
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I realized with the private rheumatologist I saw, like, he was like, let's stop now, like let's not waste any time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, different story with NHS rheumatologists. I mean, they were lovely, but obviously on their side, they needed to have all the data to make sure there wasn't something else.
Well,
So
and just for
again,
those in the United States listening or other places, NHS is the
yeah,
nationalized healthcare in the UK, or is it UK or all across the board? I don't know.
UK, yeah,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So they ran the
Um,
tests again.
they ran the test, yeah. So and everything came back normal again. So I get a call from the rheumatologist, and she's like, yeah, so everything is normal, but again, your symptoms are all there. There's family history. So just to be sure, I want to do MRI of your hands because I can see there's deformity there as well. And so finally, MRI came back, and there was erosions in my hands, and which erosions that showed it was inflammatory arthritis. And in my left
Okay.
hand, I had osteoarthritis as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, okay, yes, this is, you're being diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. So you did hydroxychloroquine already.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start your methotrexate. So then that journey started. And I think for me at the beginning, it was denial in a sense of maybe like protecting myself to
Yeah.
like realize what was really going on. Because I
Mm-hmm.
remember my partner, who's like, wow, you're amazing. Like, you're taking this so well. Like, you're so strong. And I was like, yeah, because I don't believe it. But I didn't say
Okay.
anything.
Yeah.
So everybody was like, okay, she's very cool about this. And it was like 1 month in, 2 months in, 3 months in. And then I think starting methotrexate and the side effects, and I had a massive flare up as well in the middle.
Mm.
And then I kind of realized, okay, this is real. And
Yeah.
and then from denial, it was kind of depression, anxiety of, what is going to happen? What does this mean? How am I going to live? Also with my work being chef,
Yeah.
I was reading, all these sad stories, and there's disability, there's reduced movement, and I could see my hands, and I was just panicking a little bit,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it
Yeah.
was a
So
dark moment.
no, I think this is it's such a fascinating dichotomy, because I remember in one of the first Room to Thrive group meetings we had, a lot of people were saying they felt weird for being in denial, because they're like, I understand that I have this enough that I'm here, like I've joined this program, but I also, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, do I really have it? And I think there's like this, like, I really identify with what you're saying about it being protective, because on the one hand, if you're in denial, that means that you don't have to accept this long-term chronic condition. But if you accept it, there's benefits and downsides of both, right? Because if you accept it, then you open yourself up to, there's a reason for your pain, and there's a path to improving your pain and improving your condition through, medication and lifestyle. And whereas I think for me, what protected me from going fully into denial is that, well, okay, if it's not rheumatoid arthritis, then I'm back to square one with pain with no answers. And that was the worst. So I don't know, did you feel any of that, where it was like, did you feel any relief at all to have an official diagnosis, or was it all just swirling?
I think for one part, yes. And I realized that when it was taken away from me recently, when I
Yeah.
had my follow-up appointment a couple of months ago, because obviously all of the classic medications weren't working, and I had allergic reaction with sulfasalazine as well.
Yeah.
So then the rheumatologist at our appointment, she was like, oh, maybe it's not psoriatic arthritis. Maybe we need to go back to square one and rethink everything. And that was when I was like, no, no, don't take this away from me. Like, you gave me a
Yeah.
name of what this is, and I need a name. I need to know what
Yeah.
all my symptoms are and what is,
Yes.
what can help and what are the treatment for it. So yeah, I think the time that it was kind of taken away from me, and then obviously like it was, I did an ultrasound after that just recently, and I did have inflammation, so the
Yeah.
diagnosis was reconfirmed again.
No, but
But yeah, it was,
yeah.
sorry,
No,
yeah.
sorry. No, no, you keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, I think it was just it's a long process.
Yeah.
I think all these steps of grief and like denial, depression, anxiety.
Hmm.
I think especially like being in your group and realizing that everybody goes through them is in a way comforting, and it gives you
Yeah.
the confidence to move forward. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's what helped me the most, I think,
Oh,
realizing that I wasn't alone and there are other people that are living that or have lived and have gone through denial and depression and anxiety. And it's a circle in a way. You go back to it. You have
hmm.
some bad news. You have a bad appointment with your rheumatologist, and it's fine. But it's, as you say, you get all the tools in your box, and
Yeah.
to be able to kind of accept and to know what works best for you
Mm.
and how to move forward. And that, yeah, like getting all the tools was the process to accept um what I had, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So often I think that we can see patterns in other people better than we see them in ourselves, right? So like if you're experiencing kind of an issue of like ping-ponging back and forth between denial and then kind of anxiety about the condition that you're not in denial about anymore, and then you ping pong back and forth, you can see when you're in a group setting, you see other people go through that, and it's much easier to identify it in someone else and then also be like, well, wait a minute, I'm also going through that. It's almost like you work backwards, you know? So, oh shoot, I was gonna say something else in my train of thought, just the train of thought left the station. I was like, I don't remember what that was. But, but yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you joined the group, but I do think people sometimes will say like, oh, well, I don't really have a diagnosis yet, or I'm not sure my diagnosis is correct. And so much of what we go over in Room to Thrive is these tools to deal with ambiguity and cope with ambiguity, cope with ups and downs, cope with the fact that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow necessarily. And so that's, you're not the first person in the group, for better, for worse, that has had their diagnosis kind of questioned by their medical team or reassessed. And, when this happened to another person, it got changed from rheumatoid to ankylosing spondylitis. It was like, I tried to kind of help give context to the conversation by saying, validating your emotions, but also saying long term, it is really important to have an accurate diagnosis because you want to give the right treatment at the right time. So even if it's like there's a mourning process when your diagnosis is changed, it's in your best interest to have the right, diagnosis. So anyway, but yeah, like I know that you have a lot of tools in your toolbox. So you mentioned to Room to Thrive, and what are some of the other like tools that have helped you with the coping and the emotional ups and downs?
Yeah, so I think when I made contact with you, I was kind of in the deepest, darkest,
Mm.
yeah, the darkest place. And it came at such a perfect time because you were starting the course like within a week, I think. So that
Oh,
was very
wow.
useful. Yeah, it
Oh,
was like,
wow.
oh, okay, yeah, I need to sign in, like sign me in straight away.
All
So that
right.
was great. And in the meantime, I was also doing mindfulness meditation course,
Yeah, yeah.
which I came across um, through this lady who in London, and she's a hypnotherapist and a meditation
Oh.
practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Very lovely person. And yeah, I was having a tough time, a bit of depression, and I was reading about hypnotherapist, and I was like, okay, it's interesting. I
Mm-hmm.
was very curious, so I went to see her, and I had a few sessions with her, and she said, you have all your tools to kind of go through this, and I think what would really work for you is meditation.
Mm.
And so again, she then started a course a few months later, which she does like every year, this mindfulness meditation course, and is similar to what we did. So it's like a Zoom meeting with 4 other people, and she kind of teaches and explains what meditation is, the different types of meditation. And it was very hard for me at the beginning because,
Mm.
yeah, I think for everybody, you think, meditation is about, I need to erase all my thoughts. I need to,
Yeah.
cross-legged and of course it's not like that at all. And it's not about removing all the stress and all the anxiety. Is sometimes it's also about acceptance. So
Mm-hmm.
that was and I realize now after months and practicing, it's getting much better, and is not necessarily that I meditate every day, but I'm being, I think, a bit more mindful in general.
Right.
Um, but like with CBT as well, like I've learned now my 3 favorite words are acceptance, compassion, and kindness. They're kind of,
Oh.
I always try to have those words in my mind because I
Mm-hmm.
realize they're very useful for me. So
Yeah.
acceptance, like I mean, we talked about it in the group as well, and just accepting that sometimes the pain is there and we have to go through it, and get some help with our different tools, with our gloves, with the
Mm-hmm.
feeling relaxing. And for me it was accepting that stress is there.
Yeah. That's
Obviously I
so
did
hard.
I did modify, like being a chef unfortunately is a very stressful environment, is very hectic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did kind of mold and try to change my work to make it more, yeah, a bit less stressful, let's say. But there is,
Yeah.
you know, even the world we're living is, it's just difficult to, you can't remove the stress from your life and from this world, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
it's more, yeah, now I'm more like, okay, yes, this is stressful, this is a stressful situation, but either I can use my tools to work on it, or I just accept it. And
Yeah, yeah, and
then,
I was gonna say, so as a very like goal-oriented person, I think if you only look at stress reduction, then if you have any like maybe I'm just being a perfectionist, but I'm like, if my goal is to reduce stress, then if I have any remaining stress after I do my tools, I've like failed, right? Because I still have stress and the goal is to reduce stress or eliminate stress. Whereas if you're like, my goal is to cope better with the stress, it actually long term does reduce the stress. It's the same with like the happiness trap, or like you're actually happier when you stop trying to be happy all the time and thinking that your life should be just pure happiness one moment after the other. So I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
that was the problem for me at the beginning. It was like, I need to eliminate it. I need to, get rid of all the stress in my life. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that just makes it a lot more stressful. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I
definitely.
think that there are conditions, like life is an inherently stressful endeavor, right? And there's never been
Yeah.
a time in like human history that life is, I mean, maybe actually I should be culturally, if I'm culturally competent here, and I remember my anthropology training, there are cultures that do have a lot more like rest in their day, like different parts of the world, there's cultures that have evolved, where people are like, they have leisure time and so it's not that everyone is like inherently as stressed as like the modern Western world is, but in general saying that, okay, we have our brains, at least according to a lot of the research I've read, is that our brains are kind of wired towards paying more attention to negative events than positive events, because negative events and negative possibilities are the ones that have more of an effect on our survival, and that survival is like our main goal, right, as a species. So like to survive and to propagate your genes, right? So anyway, long story short, like, yeah, setting a realistic goal that like I understand that stress is not good for me, that it's inflammatory. It's not good if you're living with an inflammatory condition like psoriatic arthritis, but also saying I also accept that stress is pretty much inevitable most days. And then you'll be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't occur one day, but that, I'm going to have a better quality of life if I can cope with the existing stress. So, but I think, yeah, being a chef, I always say when people get diagnosed, they're like, or people will say like, what are the worst jobs to have or the hardest jobs to have if you have like any sort of inflammatory arthritis that affects the hands. And I would say like being a massage therapist and like a chef are like two of the hardest ones. So but sorry, I did want to ask you more about your like hacks that you've learned as a chef, but did you want to say anything more about like the mindfulness practice and CBT and like what's helped you mentally cope?
I think CBT was very helpful as well, because
Yeah.
I had therapy before. I had like a long-term relationship with a therapist. It was like 6 years, and in the past I went through depression for a while and anxiety. So, and that was very useful, but it was kind of like very deep therapy, going through all your traumas, and I realized at this time that's not what I needed. I needed something more practical, a bit more structure as well, in what can be useful for me with, having a new diagnosis. And CBT, I think, was really, really good for me. So,
oh, it stands for cognitive behavior therapy, by the way.
yeah,
I always try to remember to define the acronyms.
Sorry, I completely forgot.
No, it's
So yeah, it was very helpful, and I'm quite visual, and I love my lists. I love to write things down. So being able to write things down, and also she talked a lot about images. So when you have a negative thought, what do you see? What are the images? And that was incredibly helpful for me.
Interesting.
And for example, also I remember having this image and like being a puzzle. So a puzzle, you put it together, but it can be very fragile because all the pieces can kind of fall. So if you didn't have like a stable top to keep it on, it kind of falls apart. So it was kind of, so one piece falls down, and every piece is like one piece is stress, and one of the pieces, is an argument with your partner, and kind of everything. When more than one piece fall, it's more difficult to put the pieces back together in a way. So she was saying so you have a bad day at work, you're stressed, you had an argument with your partner, there's different things going on, and it kind of, you all bring it together in one big thing, and actually dividing it. So for example, situation one, a stressful moment at work. How can I work with that? Do I accept it? Do I work on it? Do I have, 5 minutes meditation, bit of breathing, whatever? And so dividing it makes it less overwhelming. For me, at least it worked really well. So yeah, that was really useful.
Yeah, and I also like the idea of naming things, just the act of naming it. Like this is my anxiety about my work, or this is my, and separating it out so it's less like swirling and overwhelming. That's super, super helpful. And I do think it's a good lesson that like different therapists at different times in your life and different styles of therapy, like one-on-one individualized therapy, can be useful in different ways, right? So, maybe you were saying you right now, the right thing for you was, a more practical kind of logical approach like CBT, versus previously you needed like a different kind of trauma based approach, or, and I think that therapy is not just one thing, right? And even physical therapy, occupational, no therapy is just one thing. There's an art and a science. So it really is, for those listening, I know I've said this a million times, but if maybe it's your first episode, but that, it is normal to have to, interview a couple of therapists, or, take a little while to find a good fit for you. And that's just because you don't like the first one you talk to doesn't mean you should quit or say that therapy is not for you.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time, and as I say, for different people, there's different kind of therapies in different situations in life, and you can take the time. I mean, it took me a while to find one that I could
Mhm.
relate to. So,
Mhm.
you have, but it kind of, as soon as you find the right one, I think you realize straight away, and you kind of click. And that's what important, because you're going to say, some very personal things.
Yeah.
So you need to feel comfortable with that person. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And before we talk about, I really want to get more into the chef stuff as well, but I'm going to go back actually to, you were saying that you found Room to Thrive, like initially, you found it within a week of when it was going to, the next, group was going to start, but you also were saying it was kind of like a low point for you. Like, what were some of the thoughts that were swirling in your head at that time, if you can remember? I know it's probably painful to go back.
Yeah, I think it was that time that I was on methotrexate, so I had really
Oh,
the
okay.
bad side effects, and I had a flare up. I was very busy at work, very stressed. So it was
Mm.
kind of everything put together. And I just remember, I think it was also, did we start? It was April we started.
Yes,
So
yeah.
yeah, so here was like the weather was really awful. It was raining all the time. It was really dark. So it was the
Mm.
kind of, I have, this images of everything being very dark. And I I just couldn't find answers. You
Mm.
go through your research on Google, and but it's all data. Like, there's not much. Of course, I wasn't on social media at the time, so that is well.
Mm.
I didn't have that sense of community. I was watching a few YouTube videos
Okay.
of people like telling their experience, but I couldn't find much, and probably because I didn't have the tools and I didn't understand how
Mhm.
to get to people. And I think not having social media is also a big part. You kind of,
Mm.
it's difficult to create a community. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it just came at the perfect time, and it, when you have moments where you're going to be really confused and you're going to be feeling very alone, very lonely, because your loved ones, of course, they're there and they try to help you. I'm lucky. I have my partner, and he's been so supportive,
Oh.
so amazing, because I can be very grumpy when I'm in pain.
I'm so
um,
glad you have that. You deserve that.
thank you. But yeah, you do feel the need to have someone that is feeling what you're feeling, and to just to listen and hear that
Mhm.
someone went through that, and is very comforting and calming.
Yeah.
And also, like, being able to learn everything that you teach it was very helpful, because I think,
Mhm.
we said, knowledge is power, and also being able to advocate for yourself and being able to go to your rheumatology appointments and know what you're talking about. I think
Mm.
I always was used to being very passive, like the
Mm.
doctors, this authority, and I can't say anything, I can't contradict them. Um,
Mm.
but then you want to have that knowledge to be able to say, no, excuse me, like, I need this to be explained again. Why is this, why are you doing this and not this? It is, again, it's going to be a long relationship with them. So you
Mhm.
want it to be
Mhm.
equal. And I think to be able to be equal, you need to have that knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. And it really is interesting. Like, I've seen that so many times in the group, because I've done it, over a few years now, but where people they're scared to talk to their doctor about something or bring up a question that they have, and that encouragement from the other members and the knowledge that you're gonna have to report back to them, like, okay, next
Yeah.
meeting, like, let us know how it goes. Like, that can be that extra nudge. or just hearing, I mean, like you really advocated for yourself when you had a kind of not great interaction with your, primary rheumatologist, sorry. And then, some people in the group, or sorry, is it okay if I tell them the story? Or you
Yeah, absolutely.
you
Yeah,
chime
yeah.
in?
I was
Well,
gonna start as well.
yeah, well, I'll just set the stage a little bit, but I'll say
Yeah.
from my experience, if you have a not great interaction with your health provider, a lot of times people will say, get a second opinion. And that's actually what I was kind of leaning towards suggesting you think about in your case. But the other option is to talk to the provider and like seek a resolution or seek a repairing of that relationship, which there's so many benefits to that because that provider has your knowledge of your case. If you get a second opinion, you're starting from square one. Again, a lot of times second opinions are warranted and necessary, but yeah, tell me a little bit about how like how you got the courage to advocate for yourself and go back to that provider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was incredibly useful for me to share it with the group and to get all the different opinions. Also to have someone that was going through this, I had gone through the same thing. So being diagnosed twice and having a different diagnosis the second time. Um, and yeah, just getting all the advice and kind of the courage to do something about it. So yeah, for me, initially I thought, yeah, I'm going to get a second opinion. But in the UK, a second opinion means, again, paying a private rheumatologist. And I started thinking, I said, okay, this primary rheumatologist, I'm going to see her for a while. I want to create a good relationship and I want her to understand that she needs to explain things to me like properly. And I realized also, in a way, healthcare is overwhelmed. We said this before, and they're seeing so many patients a day, and sometimes it just get mechanic, probably, okay, this 20 minutes appointment, next, and you don't think about the compassionate elements, about being kind, because you just have so much to do, and I do appreciate that completely. So I decided to send her an email with basically saying, our last appointment left me very confused and just I don't understand what's going on and all the points that I didn't understand and what for me made sense, what didn't. And she came back to me very quickly, which was surprising. And she was very nice in the email. And then in our next appointment, about a month later, like she was very different and she was very compassionate, very kind, and she explained everything. She treated me like an equal.
Mm.
And yeah, I think the relationship kind of turned and she realized that I was not gonna take, just simple answers and without any explanation. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's very important to, if you're not sure about something, if something is not clear, don't be scared. And I always been very scared as well in rheumatology appointment. Like I have 20 minutes, there's going to be someone else. I was always very anxious that I couldn't take too much time because there was someone else waiting after me. But it is your time and you do have the right to be there and to have your doctor explain everything to you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, that's such a good teachable moment, I guess, for everyone else. I keep saying that phrase lately, but and I think, in this case, it wasn't just that the rheumatologist hadn't like explained things in a way that you could understand, but that I think if I remember correctly, that you kind of felt like emotionally there was like a dismissal of you, or a lack of understanding that, if they were going to potentially like change your diagnosis or question your diagnosis, like that's a huge deal for you, right? As opposed to just looking at it as this kind of like, oh yeah, well, now we're not really sure because you haven't responded well to meds, but and just, okay, fine, bye. Like this kind of like
Yeah.
very like unhumane kind of conversation. And it's like you both win when you get to have a better conversation, right? When you get to have a conversation of mutual respect and I think it was really wise that you it's really in your best interest to have a good relationship with the provider and your healthcare providers. And, you know, a lot of times there are definitely cases where people need to quote unquote fire their doctor. I'm not, you know, going to say that that's never appropriate. It definitely can be, but sometimes because we feel so, as a patient, you are not in the power position, right? At the end of the day, no matter how strong the partnership is, the doctor has the power to write a prescription. You don't have that power. You know, so oh, sorry, I have like 5 different thoughts, but it's in your best interest to have a great relationship with them. And oh yeah, because you don't have power often as a patient, you can feel like, I'm going to assert my power by firing you as my provider. And it feels good in the moment. And again, it is 100% necessary in some cases. There are providers that are not good, that are not a good fit for you, or just not competent or not caring. But if you have only a smaller kind of bad appointment, there's also the possibility that you'll actually get what you want by repairing that relationship, as opposed to throwing out all that background relationship that you had with them and starting from scratch. Again, I mean, there's so much. One of the best things about social media is that we can encourage each other and support each other and, you know, find community and not feel alone on just the kind of organic level of like the mass social media out there, right? Which is full of like a lot of great things, a lot of bad things. But one of the downsides is that I've seen is sometimes there are people who are like, you need to fire that doctor. You need to, da, 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 da. And it's like, oh, wait, slow down a little bit. Again, and I'm not saying that in a way because like, it's not nice to do that. I'm saying that because you might get what you want by staying with that doctor. That's a possibility. Anyway, so longer way of saying what you just said in a way.
No, but yeah, exactly. Like because sometimes it feels so good to fire your doctor, but then you will have to start from scratch again. And sometimes it's the only solution, as you say, but sometimes is communication is the key.
Yeah.
And sometimes is just with communicating well, you can achieve what you need. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, starting from a point of curiosity, you know, I think that's in that book of like the 7 habits of highly effective people. Like, be curious. Like, I'm curious, like, when you said this, it felt like this. Is that what you meant? Because, and that's a good kind of conflict resolution skill in general, because often there's like a double, like there's something, your paths are getting crossed, you know, like for example, I've seen, again, this is maybe going on a tangent about social media, but I've seen people say, well, the doctor didn't diagnose me, so they suck or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe because an accurate diagnosis is really important, then they're saying, I want the best for you. And I don't think that your symptoms meet the criteria, let's say, for an inflammatory arthritis diagnosis. And I took a vow to first do no harm. And if I give you methotrexate, I could potentially do harm if that's not what your body needs right now. Right. And I think we are like, we have an idea as a patient, this is what I need. I need the diagnosis, I need the meds, I need the treatment, I need the validation. But the doctor might be like, I want to give them what they need. And what they need is they need a referral to another specialist to make sure that this is the right thing for them. But I've seen people say, oh, they just passed me off to another specialist. Like, they don't want to deal with me anymore. But actually passing you to another specialist could be a sign of respecting that specialist authority. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all like this perception game, you know? And so starting with curiosity rather than judgment on both parts, on the doctor's part, not judging us, thinking that we're hypochondriacs or whatnot. And then on our part, understanding that maybe the doctor does have your best interests at heart, and maybe what you think is the goal of this appointment is not what's actually in your best interest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was that
And I
one
think
long sentence?
yeah, and as humans, like we have negative thoughts. Like, it is in our nature thing to have these movies of like the worst case scenario always.
Yes.
But yeah, as you say, curiosity and like not judgmental. And you're like, okay, this is what I received, but maybe what she was saying is completely different, or maybe I need to, yeah, it's just, yeah, just not to try not to have all those negative thoughts is definitely helpful in this
Yeah,
situation.
assuming positive intent, and you
Yeah.
can actually end up like killing them with kindness sometimes. Be like, I'm sorry, like I know you probably like were that ABC, you were probably trying to do like this amazing thing, but I'm feeling really confused and I'm sorry. Like kind of like, and again, that's my personality to be a little more like, um, you know, def what's the thing? Like deferential at times, which is weird because I'm also like a fierce advocate. But anyway, but I'm like, I find it's in my favor to be deferential sometimes, to say like, I know that you already explained this, but can you tell me again, like, why do I need to fail this medicine before starting the biologic or something? Like saying kind of like not in a confrontational way, in a more like, can you just explain this to me? You might get more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Is that an American
Yeah, for
phrase?
sure.
More bang for your buck, or do
Yeah,
you
I think
say,
so, yeah.
oh, okay,
Yeah, I
more
think it's more American.
stuff for your stuff? I don't know. Yeah, more better outcome for smaller amount of effort.
Yeah.
But okay, now we're going to talk about being a chef, because people have to cook even if they're not chefs. But some people do. Kitchen life hacks is like, I would consider like the low hanging fruit for me. Like when I make videos, it's like, it's one that, in the sense that everyone is asking about this and everyone wants information, like cutting with knives, holding a fork, like you said, so many fine motor skills and small hand skills involved. What are some of the things that have helped you, maybe workaround strategies or gadgets? Throw it out.
Um, ooh, so I did see a hand therapist because I was struggling quite a lot at work, and what was very helpful um, was kind of using your hands rather than your fingers to hold stuff, and if you're carrying a pot, with both hands. Um, Knife, I still use my knife because it's just, yeah, for a chef it's difficult to
Yeah.
but I am in a very good position that I am the head chef, so I can tell others what to do in a way. So because there are certain things that I really struggle in doing now, for like filleting a fish, or like burning a chicken is something that I really like. I just can't
Mm,
do. So the rest of the team does it, and so yeah, I think yeah, using both hands, trying to get breaks as much.
mm,
Sometimes it's just impossible, but um, I mean, I did change um, restaurants. I'm working now in a place which is not as busy, and we only work
mhm.
daytime. So I did make those changes because otherwise it wouldn't have been sustainable. Because realistically, working as a chef, it doesn't go with living a healthy life. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to have both, because
Yeah.
you are kind of cooking when you should have, your lunch or your dinner.
Yeah.
You're on your feet for many hours. You're carrying weights. So yeah, it's quite tough, but you can adjust. And now I'm adjusting even more by reducing my hours.
Mhm.
And because luckily I work in a company that kind of understands and is very supportive on that side. Um, but yeah, I think um, yeah, cooking in general, like I love cooking when I'm at home as well. Sometimes it's difficult, especially when after day's work, it's difficult for everyone to,
Yeah.
cook from scratch and um,
Right.
get whole food. And but I do try, and what I do sometimes when I have more energy, like I cook, I don't know, I have a big batch of kale, or so I cook the whole batch and then I use it for different recipes throughout the week.
Mhm.
So yeah, cooking a whole cauliflower and again using it for a few different recipes, so I got it for the next few days. That really helps.
Yeah. I had actually another person living in London, Emily, the arthritis foodie. She shared like her tips, and that was one of hers too, for energy conservation and joint protection. Definitely batch cooking ahead of time, freezing
Mhm.
things, and I'm curious if you ever like choose what you're going to eat based on it being easier to make, because I definitely do that. Do you know what I mean? Like you were saying, filleting fish is hard, so like do you have less fish because of that, or do you just delegate the filleting, or do you alter what you're going to eat based on how easy it is to make?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have my partner at home, he's my sous chef, and he does all the chopping and
Yeah, oh, that's
and
great.
slicing. Yeah, he's really
Yeah.
good. And but yeah, I like food is a massive part of my life, and not just because of work, but I realize it makes such a difference on how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I am gluten and lactose intolerant as well. So I do
Okay.
have a gluten-free and lactose-free diet.
Mhm.
Um, we we eat mainly plant-based, but not
Mm.
just. Um, so I love fish, and there's actually a fishmonger close to us, and they do the filleting. So I buy fillets, and I usually buy
Nice.
like mackerel, salmon, because also like it's kind of a cheaper kind of fish, so it's more
Hmm.
accessible to everybody. Um, and yeah, also like frozen things. I
Yeah.
think I don't know if it's a general thing, but always just a chef thing that you shouldn't buy frozen food.
Yeah.
Um, but in reality, like is good. Like chopped frozen veggies, frozen fruits are actually really good, and it's so easy to
Yeah.
cook with them, and they retain all the flavor, all the freshness. So yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I started making smoothies with frozen spinach. So it comes like in like one big giant congealed
Lots.
thing. So then I have to like kind of thaw it a little bit, and then I put it in little. I learned this from, I think, Christina, the arthritis dietitian online. She's also been on the podcast before a couple times, but where you put like you pre-measure out, some frozen, app or strawberries, banana, and then the spinach, put it together. And then all you have to do is dump that in with like a little bit of like, I try to get like, I'm trying to make it really basic, right? To be like, I need carbohydrates, fat, protein, and then some, vitamin mineral stuff. So I'm like, okay, if it just has fruit and spinach, I got to add a little bit of some sort of fat and protein too. So then I add like some protein powder and almond milk, and then like some like almond butter or something. I like nuts. I don't know about you, but you must have to have nuts with being plant-based, I'm guessing. Or
Yeah, I love nuts. I love nuts,
yeah.
seeds, legumes, and we
Yes.
sometimes also have this like clean eating for a week. So
Mm-hmm.
we do like smoothie in the morning, and then we do like a vegetable smoothie at lunch, and then at dinner we have like grains, which can be quinoa, buckwheat, millets, with veggies, with some protein, so
I love
lentils,
millet.
or
Sorry.
I love it, so good.
Yeah.
Chickpeas, so and some nuts and seed on top as well, and a nice dressing. Um, I love extra virgin olive oil. I think
Me
I grew up in
too.
Italy, so
Oh, but you're from
I need
Italy, so you must have like the real thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I need that in my life. And there are studies that is actually really good for you. So
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, definitely like I have that. And yeah, avocado I really like.
Oh.
So yeah, when we do those clean meetings, like
Hmm.
usually the first 2 days, like super grumpy, headaches, but apparently it means that it's working. And
Oh.
then yeah, and then because your body is like, what's going on? Where's my
Right. Right. Yeah.
junk food and stuff? But yeah, apparently it's normal, and then kind of gets better, and you feel more energized, less pain
Right.
usually as
Right.
well.
It's kind of like, I think
But yeah,
sometimes
it
like,
works for me.
oh, sorry. I was thinking about
So
like
yeah,
how
no,
certain things like a massage, like they actually, you might feel temporarily worse, but long-term better because it's like they're kind of waking up different, things and releasing different things that have been kind of just sitting in your fascia or in your muscles or whatnot. So sorry. I just thought, yeah, I think that that's what's really hard. Again, we get into that ambiguity and the uncertainty territory, which is like my main anxiety trigger, right? Is anxiety, is ambiguity, like I'm not sure what to do. And then uncertainty, like I'm not sure how long this is going to last, or, you know, plus small spaces. If you put all those three together, it's terrible. But anyway, you have to learn like, okay, well then some triggers, like for me being out in the sun, it right away leads to fatigue and right away leads to like me feeling badly. But other times you can do an action that actually makes you feel a little bit worse temporarily, but then long-term way better. I'm like, it's hard. It's hard to figure out when do you take that data and be like, oh, I need to stop this thing because it's made me worse, versus I need to stay with it. Anyway, do you struggle with that too? It's okay if you don't.
yeah. No, I mean, luckily, like with food, luckily, I think because my body like really tells me if certain food is not good for me.
Right.
So
That's
like
good.
for years I had gluten and I was feeling very bad. So and I can't have junk food. I can't have deep fried. So I've always had like quite a healthy diet. But I do have sometimes takeaway, and because if I'm lazy and I don't want to cook, we all need comfort in our life. So
Oh my gosh. I needed to ask you because offline, but my favorite food is Thai food and Vietnamese food. I guess foods plural, because those are totally different. But I have tried on my own, totally just muddling through, trying to make certain things like peanut sauce. And I'm like, this is so far from what it tastes like at the restaurant. Like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But anyway, it is, yeah, I've heard and read that, a lot of times the restaurant food can taste or the takeaway food, sometimes fast food, it tastes better because they put a whole bunch of, I'm not saying that your restaurant food's not good, but that maybe they put a lot of extra, sugar, butter, salt, or stuff that's not quite as healthy as, making it on your own. But I'm like, I really want to just learn how to make, pad thai, and have it taste good, or like tom kha gai soup, like the coconut soup. I even went and bought,
that's so good.
yeah, it's so good. I'm
I
always
love it.
craving that. Anyway, sorry. Side note, but yeah, but food is one of the most common questions people ask too. There's the life hacks. How do I decrease the hand pain? And then there's, is diet something that's, diet, not as a special diet, but, is nutrition something that can actually help? And so it sounds like in your case, it clearly has had an effect that you can feel. So you're saying you have reactions to foods, like, is it in your joints and just systemically? Like, I know I get really bloated if I have had gluten or dairy. Like, it's beyond just the arthritis part. Is that the same for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get really bloated and yeah, just gut wise, yeah, I don't feel good at all. But also in the joints, like it definitely brings flares, and especially deep and alcohol as well. I basically stopped drinking.
Yeah.
I have the occasional maybe once a month, if there's something going on, but
Yeah.
I feel so awful the next day, even if I have only one drink. I just feel
I've
very
never
terrible.
liked alcohol too. Yeah, my body just doesn't like alcohol. Like, anyway, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
Like sometimes your body kind of tells you what it needs. Other times it
yeah,
doesn't
I
though.
think
Before I went gluten-free, I think the gluten reaction for me was a very slow one. And because I had it every single darn day, I was like, no, I have no problem with like crackers and bread and cereals. It wasn't until I tried eliminating it that I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel so much better, like overall. Like I didn't know I was bloated all the time. It didn't really affect my rheumatoid arthritis like in a linear way that I could tell, but like my overall health and sense of bloating and sense of digestion, like I'm actually absorbing foods and nutrients, so anyway, sometimes your body and long story short, sometimes your body tells you, other times your body doesn't, because I think my body maybe it well, it was telling me, but it was telling me in a way that I was still kind of comfortable enough that I could push through. And then once I eliminated that, I was like, oh, what I thought was normal was not normal.
Yeah, I think it's more us say, okay, that's how is actually how it is. Because
Yeah.
imagine me growing up in Italy, pasta, bread,
Yeah.
pizza,
Yeah.
literally every day. So, but even when I go back home, because my family lives there, like they don't believe in gluten intolerance. Like it's not a thing. Like, well, what is if you can't have pasta, you can't.
Oh
That's crazy.
no.
So not everybody, but it's just I was like, yeah, it is a thing actually. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's just so much in the culture. You have to have pasta, you have to have pizza. That
Totally.
is it's just like, no, this is not real. Yeah, it's not a thing. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. Can I have some veggies, please?
I know. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, I have heard that some regions of Italy, and this is just something I read online, but some regions are really good about providing gluten-free options nowadays, but maybe that was a
It is
tourist thing.
changing.
Oh, okay.
It is changing. I must say, because in especially the recent years, there are more and more people with celiac disease as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so actually, the government gives money to celiac people to buy gluten-free food because it's very, very expensive.
Ah,
So it
yeah,
gives
yeah,
like
yeah.
little bonus cards to buy gluten-free.
Oh,
So it
that's
is
nice.
changing, but like in the common,
Yeah.
it's like, nah, you have to have your pizza. It's just good for you.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah, it
so
is
funny.
definitely changing.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is so fun. I want to talk to you more about food, but I want to actually, just for sake of time, I'm going to start this new segment I've decided on on like rapid fire questions. Well, and one of them is one I've asked everyone in the past too, but then I'm going to ask some more kind of quicker questions. But firstly, what do you like to say to newly diagnosed patients, or what's like a piece of wisdom or advice you would give to somebody who like just
Mhm.
yesterday got diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis and is like, what is my life now?
I think definitely join a support group.
Mm.
Do real, go to real guys. Like,
I didn't pay her to
and
say
this is not,
that.
yeah, I'm not advertising, but no, I think it's so easy to get caught up in your Google search and yes, just seeing the data and seeing what it is, what are symptoms, what's the treatment, but is so much more. So yeah, I think creating a community with social media, with a support group is is something that helped me very
that's
much. And
that's awesome.
yeah,
Sorry, I didn't.
changing your priorities as well. When I changed my priority. For me, before this, it was work. Like my priority was work. There was
Mhm.
nothing else in my world, and my body, my both my mental and my physical health came after, or didn't come at all, like many years.
Mm,
So yeah, change your priorities if you can, obviously, and do something that you really like and that makes you feel good. And you know, it is a time that you feel lonely, and yeah, definitely
mhm.
creating a community where you can share and where you can hear other people's stories is massively important, I think.
I'm glad to hear that. What is your favorite arthritis gadget or tool in your toolbox?
Mm, my gloves. I
Gloves.
love my
Yes.
gloves.
Compression
Yeah,
gloves for the win.
yeah, that's really good. And yeah, what else? Yeah, my meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
meditation gloves.
primary for me
Yeah.
at least. And then this doesn't have to be about arthritis, but what's something that's bringing you joy right now?
Um, what's bringing me joy? So I'm gonna start a new course in actually a couple of weeks. So I'm
Oh.
gonna do a nutrition course.
Ooh.
So that is bringing me a lot of joy. Is it's something that I've always been interested in, because it's kind of the science behind food, and now even more, like it's very interesting for me to understand, how nutrition can help, and with health. So I'm going to start that, and it's also about giving time for myself, for my own interests, and for hobbies, and yeah.
That's
So that right now is, yeah, I'm
having a
looking
sense of
forward to it.
purpose, something to learn. Yeah, it's so key. And do you have a favorite book or show or movie you've read or watched recently?
Um, so I'm reading The Brain Changer
Oh,
by Felice Jacka, I think. Yeah. So she's
okay.
a professor in Australia, and it's basically about her research um, on how food affects not only physical health but mental health as well.
Mm.
And it's super interesting, because I was actually listening into a podcast um, of The Doctor's Kitchen.
Oh,
So he's
yes, I've heard of that.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So he's general practitioner in the UK, and in the years he realized how food is important for health. So
Hmm.
he had Felice Jacka in as a guest in the podcast, and so she was explaining, her research and everything, and it was like very interesting, um, and it's not like heavy reading; it's quite light. Like she writes really well, and in
Nice.
a very, she explained well, and it's quite, everybody can understand. Like, I don't have a science background, so
Right,
and
right,
it's just
right.
very fascinating about how research is done, and how data and how all the variables can change
Hmm.
assessing outcomes. So yeah, yeah, definitely is a good one.
That's awesome. And then, okay, back to the arthritis topic too. But I mean, that related too. But this is a hard one to answer. So it's very broad. But what does it mean to for you? What does it mean to live a good life with rheumatic disease? Well, I know. What's the meaning of life while you're at it? No.
Um, oh, I think having a good balance. Um, so again, I said this already. So changing my priorities and
Yeah.
thinking about myself more,
Mm.
being more compassionate for myself, being, well, actually being, I've never been compassionate or kind to myself. So being actually
Mm.
learn how to be compassionate and how to be kind. And I've actually learned so much, and it gave me the opportunity to learn different things, and um, be interested and be curious in new things. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, living with arthritis means always be curious, do your research, but make sure you do the, like, good research. Um,
I'm condensing this. I'm like, be compassionately curious, curious and compassionate. I love that. Yeah. I thought I was self-compassionate before I learned, I was like, why is everyone talking about self-compassion? Like, it's this new thing. Like, all you have to do is just love yourself or whatever. But I'm like, you can love yourself without being like compassionate to yourself on a minute by minute basis, right? Like, I had good self-esteem, but I realized I had this running commentary in my head of like, that's not good enough, and that's totally from my own self-criticism. It's not from anything in my childhood or anything, because I was always given like so much encouragement and stuff. But anyway, it's just been really interesting to be like, and I'm teaching this to my son as well, of like, is there a different way of looking at that? Not saying like I'm right and you're wrong, but like, um, I wish I hope he's okay if this being out there, but I'll think later if I'm going to delete it. But he said, I was coaching his soccer team, and on Saturday it was really hot, unusually hot here, and it was smoky. So it was pretty miserable, and
oh,
was a 12 o'clock noon game. I'm sitting there with my rain umbrella providing shade to myself. And then we were winning 3-2, and then we were tied. The other team scored, and he goes, we have to win. If we don't win, all of this suffering in the sun will be for nothing. I was like, he said the quiet part out loud. Like I'm sure many of us were thinking that, but also, is there a different way of looking at it? It was just really funny because I mean, the
Oh,
self-compassion
so
is more about,
sorry.
yeah, no, we didn't end up winning, but then, if we had lost, it probably would have been like, a different story. But, I see in his self-assessment, again, like we talked earlier, in groups or in social settings, you can see other people's, their self-assessment, their self-compassion or lack thereof easier than you can see it in yourself. And, saying, oh, I hear you saying that you are terrible at soccer because you missed one tackle. Is there another way of looking at that? Missing one tackle, trying to say it and it actually goes better when, I'm not saying I'm amazing. I didn't necessarily get through to him. But in the case, there's been cases where it's like, we're very hard on ourselves, and just thinking, is there a different way of looking at it is helpful. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's so easy to beat yourself up, and
yeah.
yeah, I think living with arthritis means, letting it go and just be kind to yourself, and taking moments for yourself. And if you don't always have to go, 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 go. There are times where
Mhm.
it's fine to stay in bed all day, and just be and just watch silly stuff on Netflix is absolutely fine.
Oh yeah, I just binged Severance, the show on Apple TV Plus. It's
Um,
really good. It's
yeah.
so good. And yeah, I was like, I deserve this. I deserve this break. But thank you so much. Is there anything else you would want to share before we complete this wrapping up?
Um, no, I think no, it was amazing. Yeah,
Oh,
it was really good to be able to share my story. Yeah.
thank you so much. And I was thinking like if I renamed the podcast, it would be like Arthritis Life Stories, because it's like that is kind of what we're doing, right? We are, sharing people's life stories, and then I'm like sprinkling in little pieces of wisdom or attempting to. So, and where can people find you online if they want to follow up and ask you about, maybe there's a chef listening who's like, oh, how does she do it?
Yeah, so again, as I said, I didn't have social media for a few years, but just recently, literally 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
I decided to create this profile on Instagram, which is called Arthritis Chef. And
Yeah.
it's again just because I realized how important it is to share because it was so helpful for me. And I just,
Mm,
yeah, want to share my story, and hopefully I'm setting up a blog as well, which is
mhm.
going to be connected to the profile, and just kind of sharing recipes, tips, and also like, since I'm going to do this nutrition course, hopefully I'm going to learn, very useful and interesting things. So yeah, Arthritis Chef on Instagram. I'm there.
I love
New.
of course I'm biased because it's like a similar graphic style to mine, but I love the logo, Kate Personal Chef. It's so cute.
Yeah, and my partner, he's a professional photographer.
I was gonna say,
So
okay, who
we just,
takes your photos? Because this is magazine worthy. Yeah, you guys have to watch.
I'm so lucky.
Yeah, so it's personal chef Kate at .wordpress.com. So I'm gonna put that on there too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna do a new. I'm gonna probably, because this is private chef work. But yeah, all the images from there are from my partner. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you make me want to eat vegetables, which is hard to do because I am very like I have a protein and carb kind of constant cravings for protein and carbs, not as much for like nutrients. But hey, you just gotta hide the vegetables and the carbs, and then that's good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, is that a meringue? Okay, so I'm gonna stop looking at this because we gotta wrap it up. But thank you so much. Oh, are
Sorry.
your headphones lost power? We talked for so long.
Sorry, I think I lost you.
Oh, I'm here. Are you still here?
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry, my headphones have been surprised.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Nice. Okay. No, I mean, I was just saying your website's amazing, but thank you so much. And yeah, everyone check out her Instagram at Arthritis Chef. I can't believe you got that that name. That's awesome. I would have thought someone else maybe would have snagged it up. And if you have any questions for either of us, you can go ahead and comment on the Instagram show page for this episode, or email me at info@myarthritislife.net. But thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciated chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.